Yo, what it do, what it is, what it ain't. This is your brother J International tapping back in once again. Hoping that you guys like, share, and if you're feeling kind, and you want to help a brother out, subscribe and donate if you like, if you want to help a brother out. As y'all can see, and if you can't see or you can't guess, I'm driving a truck, a semi-truck, 18-wheeler. Not totally by choice and not totally by force, because I could be on the side of the road picking up trash for a living. But economic reasons led me to this profession. So the title of this video is how did I end up driving trucks with a university degree from what I would say a top-ranked college at the time. So we really got to go back. We really got to go back in my history, and what I feel was the pivotal moment, or the pivotal point in my life, is when my father died unexpectedly. My father died unexpectedly through a brain aneurysm. So that's what they say. And this happened around the time when I was 17 going on 18. And I was raised in a single parent home by my father. My father was a single parent. My mother wasn't involved. My biological mother wasn't involved. Though my father was married, he was married at the time of his passing, and he had been married to this woman for like about 7 years, but me and this woman didn't get along. She didn't like me, and she treated me like I was like baggage, in terms of my father. And she had a daughter too. So we were both around, we were both around that same age. I was a few years older than her. I'm a few years older than her, but so this woman treated me like I was just like, some baggage with him. Like, she didn't really want me around, and it showed in her behavior towards me when I lived in that household. But practically, I would say for the majority of my life, it was me and my father moving around and his different women. And my father, he did his best, He worked, he provided for me, kept a roof over my head, clothes on my back, food, and he did his best. Oftentimes I would come home from school and he'd be at work, and I would have to, prepare my own food, or or maybe it was some food already there, but most of the time when I came home from school, he was at work. But long story short, he didn't really, and maybe because he was planning to be around longer, he didn't really discuss with me what would be my future. You know, whether I was going to go to a trade school, whether I was going to go to college, if I was going to go to college, what I was going to major in. He didn't really discuss these things with me, because in my opinion, what I think is he felt like he was going to be around longer. He felt like, okay, when he's 18, 19, whatever, we'll have this discussion. But that didn't happen. You know, he passed. So, that being stated, my father had a brother and sister who we could say were financially successful. His sister, she was like a top accounting. She was even like featured in a magazine article about the success of her accounting business. She was college educated. Then his brother, who was also financially successful, he owned properties, he owned houses. They both owned houses. As a matter of fact, it was a time where we had to live in one of my aunt's houses in the Oakland Hills. Me, my father, and his then at the time girlfriend. But they both had properties. They were successful in their careers. My uncle was a successful financial advisor. They both were college educated. So when my father untimely demise at the age of around when I just turned 18, you would think that these two would kind of step in, understanding the situation, understanding that my biological mom wasn't involved. And I'm pretty sure they understood that the stepmother wasn't really feeling me. You know, I'm pretty sure they knew that. I'm pretty sure my father relayed this to them and probably let them know, hey, if anything happens to me, you know, this is your nephew. Anyway, one would think that they would step up and step to the plate and kind of give me some guidance. Because the reason why a lot of youth end up in bad situations and maybe make some mistakes and go off the path is a lot of them don't have mentorship, especially boys, and especially black boys. A lot of black boys grow up in single mother homes, and these mothers can't, no matter how much they try to tell you they play both roles, they can't play the role of a man, of a dope, positive male in this young boy's life. They can't do that. Only a man can make a man and teach a young boy which way to go. So this is why when you look at those statistically, those situations where a boy is raised in a single mother home, statistically it shows that there's a high probability that when those boys become adults, they're going to end up in prison. They're going to end up in some type of life of crime because the mom couldn't give them that discipline that a strong adult male figure would have. So, though I had my father in my life up until 17, 18, I still needed that mentorship when his demise, because that mentorship would have came in and say, okay, let's say my uncle came in and said, all right, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And let's say I said, hold on, y'all. He said, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. I really don't know. I got some ideas, but I don't know. He might have said, okay, maybe I could show you what I do. And you can come to my office, you can see what I do, and maybe this might be something that you want to do. And let's say he showed me that and I didn't like it. He might say, okay, well, maybe we might consider trade school for you. Or even my auntie. My auntie could have took me in and showed me her business. And likewise, maybe I would have liked it, and she could have been like a mentor and say, okay, when you're going to go to college, this is the college I think you should go to, and you're going to major in accounting. But none of that happened, y'all. None of that happened. They kind of dropped the ball and just said, oh, okay. So what ended up happening is my father's best friend, who grew up with my father, who went to high school with my father, they had conversations. And my father's best friend, who I consider an uncle, also had a son my age. And so, from what I understand, their conversations were like, based on, if something ever happened to either one of us, you take my son in or I take your son in. And they made that promise. So my father's best friend took me in. When my father passed, I was renting. My father had got me an apartment. I had a roommate because he knew that his wife didn't really want me there. She probably was causing stress to him, talking about, he needs to go, he needs to have it. So he found me a roommate, and me and his roommate shared the apartment. So, but when he passed, I was working at his business. What he was doing, he was a modular installer. He installed module offices in businesses. That was his business with his best friend, the best friend that I ended up living with. So when he passed, this best friend took me in, and the business kind of went down after my father passed, because they were partners in the business. So you would think when he took me in, you would think, oh, he got a mentor now. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case, because my father's best friend had his own situation. He had his own problems going on. So not only did he have the son that was my age, he had a daughter that was a little bit younger. He had grandchildren. He had other older children, adult grown children that were living in that house with his grandchildren. And he was having marital problems. So his mind, he was distracted. So all he really could provide me was a room and board and food and a little money here and there. But I think because of that point in his life and the things that he was going through, he couldn't really offer me that mentorship. But though that uncle and auntie could, especially the auntie, because she was a childless woman. She adopted some woman from London. That's a whole nother story. I don't know how that happened. And made that girl her daughter, her adopted daughter. But at the time, she didn't have that. She was a childless woman. She was married to a husband. He was also he was an educator, so he was successful. They were living in a multi-million-dollar house in the Oakland Hills. If you're from Oakland, you know about them houses in the hills. And my uncle too. But they didn't. The only thing they did was come around here and there to visit me at my uncle's best friend's house and say, oh, is he doing good? Oh, how's he doing? You know, this, that, and the other. You know, talk to me a little bit and just tell me, stay in school. That's it. Stay in school, get your degree. Not what I should get a degree in or what I should do, or maybe school wasn't for me. So, because I feel at this point in my life, as I look back, they dropped the ball. You would think that these are my blood relatives, that they would come in and look at their nephew, look at their brother's son, who is now out here alone, lost, no direction. You know, what they considered a problem child. They didn't do that. As a matter of fact, the uncle, and it's in my past videos, he was concerned about having a life insurance policy on me. Not investing in some stock or even a college fund. He was concerned about having a life insurance policy on a teenager to pay for the funeral expenses of an unlikely demise. That's it. That's real talk. Real talk. And if you look at my past videos, I talk about that whole story, about what happened with that situation. The aunt, she was just, I don't know. And these are both educated, financially literate individuals. They could have, instead of having a life insurance policy, why not invest in Apple stock for me? Can you imagine if they would have invested at that time in maybe 50 or 10 shares of Apple stock for me instead of a life insurance policy, and just told me, hey, don't touch it, let it sit? Can you imagine what that could have what type of benefit that could have been for me later on in life? Maybe I could have by that time had the knowledge and the understanding, be like, oh man, I got a couple $100,000 in stock that I can sell, and I can either start a business or whatever. But that didn't happen, y'all. The ball was dropped by them. And that mentorship that I lacked at that age just led me down a life of mistakes and trying to figure it out on my own, hitting my head, learning from those mistakes, and then trying to figure it out on my own. That is what led me down that life. And though I did finish college, because I was working at this dead-end job, and I'm like, man, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I don't want to work in no warehouses. I don't want to, be a security guard for the rest of my life. So I'm like, well, what can I do? What does society tell you to do? Oh, so society tell you, in order to have the American dream, you got to go to school, get an education, so you can get a good job and have the American dream. So I just went to a university with that premise. And when I decided that I was going to go to university, let me take a sip of my coffee, y'all. My morning caffeine fix. But when I decided, okay, I got to go to a university, I went to the university, but with no plan. I had no plan. I went to the university with no plan. I didn't know what I should major in. I didn't know if I should go that. I didn't even know that more important than the college that you go to, the name of the college is important. Because if you go to some B-listed college, you might have a hard time when you get in that job field as opposed to somebody that went to an Ivy League or one of the top colleges, right? So I didn't even know that. I just was told by this uncle who was college educated, just go to school, get your degree, and that's it. And after doing that, finding out that after going through that college experience and finding out that this system is rigged, because I didn't know that, I was naive, and especially if you're a black male in this country, the system of white supremacy is going to hold you back. I mean, there are ways around it, but it is a barrier, and it is a hurdle. But I was naive to that. No one told me. I didn't have a mentor at this young age to tell me this is what you need to do, or take me under his wing or her wing and kind of like give me this guidance. And maybe my trajectory would have been a lot different in life, rather than stumbling and going and making all type of mistakes and ended up in all type of bad situations that could have probably been avoided if I had mentorship. That's why it's important, especially for us black males, older black males in their 30s, 40s, and up, that if we have the opportunity and we see a young brother who may be lost and misguided, and let's say we are successful, we have some type of success, and we may be childless. If you're childless, try to do what you can to help that young brother out. Don't just turn a blind eye to him. But if you can offer him some type of mentorship, and it may be brief. Your mentorship may be, hey, you might need to go to a trade. You might need to go and do this. Go to this university or do this. Or you might be in a type of business where you can show him, real estate. Like, it's very important, because the society, the system ain't going to do it. The society and system is rigged for this young black male to end up a statistic, to end up in the prison industrial system, because that's what's needed. There's private prisons that beds need to be filled to make profit, and even on a state level and a federal level, taxpayers pay for those each head in that prison. I believe the number is like 30,000 per head. So there's an incentive. They say, hey, we already got a place for these at-risk, misguided, and lost black youth. Yeah, we got a place for them. That's prison. So it's rigged. It's not in their favor to help them out. So that's why it's on us. Well, I would say even me, if I can offer some guidance, some information, maybe to tell them, hey, look where I'm at. Maybe you shouldn't take that route. Maybe you should do. Oh, you going to college for this? I don't think that's a good idea. I think you need to do this. So that is how I ended up here with a bachelor's degree as a truck driver. And no disrespect to my truck drivers, because as of right now, before this, before AI, because it's coming, but as of right now, truck drivers move America. Truck drivers move America. So they're very important. If I could show you right now, in front of me, it's just miles of trucks. And what is it doing? We're moving freight to wherever. Are we taking freight? Are we going to pick up freight? But this is what moves America. But yeah, so I say that to say, yeah, it might be that someone that is, a teenager, early 20s, may say, I want to be a truck driver. And you can offer them guidance, but maybe that's not what they want to be. You still can offer them some guidance. Maybe you should go be a plumber. I've been watching a lot of videos about how AI is going to take 95% of the jobs. Like a large percentage of jobs are not going to be no longer done by humans. They're going to be done by robots, by AI. But it's one thing that I see that's common, that I hear these guys that maybe were important parts in the development of AI are these tech guys that plumbing. Being a plumber, I don't think that's going to be taken by AI for a long time. So you might see a young guy and be like, hey, maybe you should go do plumbing. But as for me, I'm in a situation where I've been boxed into this, and even though I'm trying to internally move up, there's a system at play that's keeping me back, that doesn't want me to move up to maybe into managerial roles like a logistic manager or a transportation manager or things like that, because I have the education and the experience to do it. But there's things at play that are keeping me from that, right? But yeah, that's how I ended up with a degree driving a truck. So with that being said, it's your brother Jay International tapping back in once again. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.